Alright everyone, what I'm going to do today is a demonstration on the settings and process for scanning your 5x7 pieces of darkroom paper that you captured your pinhole photographs on, and then opening them up in Photoshop and prepping them so that they are inverted positive versions, corrected for density and contrast, and sized appropriately for printing large format at 30 by 40 inches. First thing you want to do when you walk up to one of the computers with the scanner attached is to open up the Epson Scan 2 software. It may be a different scanner software if it's a different scanner, but most of the scanners that we're using for this are Epson scanners. So find in either the applications folder where the Epson software is, or on the desktop you might find the icon, or in the programs folder and click the Epson Scan 2 icon to open up the scanner. It may not recognize what scanner is attached. It may give you a list to choose from. This connected automatically, and we can see that it has the name of the scanner up here, Epson Perfection V700, and that is indeed the name of the scanner that's connected to this computer. I'm going to open up the scanner lid and place my print face down on the glass on the platen, and I am going to orient it so that it is in the upper right hand corner. Doesn't much matter where you put it on the glass, but justifying it to one corner will help it scan more evenly and straight. Photo mode is good. We can just stay in the main settings. We're not going to use any advanced settings. The document source is the scanner glass. The type is reflective, that is, we're scanning light bouncing off the face of our print. It will probably default to one of the color choices, but you can change that to 8-bit grayscale. We are scanning black and white images, so it can just be 8-bit grayscale. And this is very important, that we want to set our resolution high enough so that we can get enough resolution to print our 30 by 40 at 300 dpi. So in order to attain that resolution, we have to scan our 5x7s at 2400 dpi. Really anything around 2000 or above. Anything around 2000 or above. You don't need to go any higher than that. It will just take longer. So 2400 is one of the resolutions set to the scanner, so I will click that. Perfectly fine. Scanning quality can remain at standard. You want your image format to be JPEG. The file name can be the default for now. We will rename it once we save it in Photoshop, and you can have it saved to the desktop. In this case, it might default to pictures or documents, but saving it right on your desktop is going to make it easiest to find. First thing we'll do is we'll hit preview to get a preview of our image that is on the glass, on the platen. We can see it here. Now what we want to do is we want to make some crop marks around it so that the scanner only scans our image. You can see right now that the input image is 8.5 by 11 and almost 3/4. That's bigger than we need to scan. So what we can do is just go to the corner of our image here and click and hold and drag out our scanner area, our input area, and you can see that we have the dotted lines around it. If it cropped in too much or too little, we can click one of the edges and we can move it to make more or less scan area. Now when we look at the input image, the range down at the bottom here, now we should see something much closer to 5x7. A little over, a little under is okay. If you have cut your paper to a different size than 5x7, your numbers might be different here, but as long as they align with the size that your paper is, you're good. And again, we see that the resolution we're scanning at here is 2400 dpi. It's very important that you scan your 5x7 at least 2000 dpi in order for us to get our 30 by 40 at 300 dpi, which is our target for printing. Now that all our settings are correct and our image is previewed on the platen with the correct scan area chosen, we can go ahead and click scan. This may take some time given that it is a large scan, a lot of resolution. I have pre-scanned my image and it is on my desktop. So I'm going to at this time go ahead and cancel this and just continue on the demonstration with the scan I've already made. Assuming that our scan has finished, we can now see that it's placed it on the desktop and named it the default name. So we can now go ahead and open it in Photoshop. You can first open Photoshop and then go to open file and open your image, or you can click on your image and drop it on top of Photoshop in most Macs, and it will open that way. I'll go ahead and open it here in our file and open. And I will navigate to my desktop and then to the image on my desktop here and go ahead and click open. And you can see it here. So the first thing we want to do is just double check that our resolution is correct. So we'll go to image and image size. And we can see that we do indeed have our 5x7 roughly at 24 ppi, pixels per inch, or dpi, dots per inch, which is essentially a printing term, but often is used to describe both the resolution in the computer and the resolution of the image as a print. So we have our 2400 dpi, our pixels per inch, so we're happy with that. To double check that we've scanned it the correct resolution, I can unclick resample image, which you can see connects the width and the height and the resolution, meaning if I change one, it will change the others. So if I go ahead and change my width to 30, because we'll want to make a 30x40 out of this, it changes my height to a little over 40 and my resolution to 407 dpi, which is more than our 300. And so we're good. We've got plenty of resolution, even a little more than we need. So we'll end up cutting a little away in this process, but our resolution is good. You want to re-click resample image so that it is back to the default. Leaving it oriented as 30x40 at 400 is fine. It is the same as 5x7 at 2400 as we saw. We can just go ahead and click OK. Now we want to adjust our image. We want to invert it so that our negative is a positive. We can do that by going to Image and Adjustments and Invert. That's Image, Adjustments, and Invert. Now that will change our black and white negative to a black and white positive, as we can see it did here. Now we want to correct quickly for density and contrast. Remember, we're working towards a more abstract quality, an abstract aesthetic in our photography. We're embracing the funkiness, kind of grittiness that pinhole cameras produce. So when we're adjusting these, we don't really have to think about adjusting them for exacting contrast and exact density, but more what we feel we want this to look like when we're done with it, what we are looking at in terms of an abstract photograph or embracing the sort of quality that pinhole photographs have. In order to do this, such that we are editing non-destructively, we can go over here and choose from our image adjustment layers. So we'll go ahead and choose our levels image adjustment layer, and that pops out our levels dialog. So now we can go ahead and adjust this. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. It seems to have enough contrast already. I'll bring down the darks a little, and I'll bring my highlight slider in here to bring up the highlights a little. And I think that's good. I'll go ahead and collapse that properties box. I think that's just fine for what I want to do to this image. Now, if I wanted to save an archive version of this as a PSD, I could, and I would want to do this now so that I saved my adjustment layers. I don't need that for this project. I always have the original scan if I needed it. Since these are scanned at such a large resolution, they're big. So if you wanted to save another PSD, that was going to be a large file, which is okay. It's a good way. It's the way to archive, to save a version of the file that you can always go back and change your mind later. But for the purposes of this project and demonstration, I don't need to do that. So I'll go ahead and flatten my layers in preparation for saving this as a JPEG. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and add a little sharpening to this image. If I use Command and plus to zoom in, I can see that it's a little fuzzy, which is no surprise for a pinhole photograph. So I'll go to Filter and Sharpen and Unsharp Mask. That's Filter, sharpen, and unsharp mask. And this is the tool I'll use to just add a little sharpness to my image. Generally speaking, you want your radius and your threshold to be down around 1, and you just want to move the amount in order to get more or less sharpness in your image. But because these are so soft, being pinhole photographs, this is actually a time where it's okay to raise up the radius in order to get a little bit more sharpness in the image. And you can see there from the preview that it gave it quite a bit more sharpness. Also made it a little gritty, which is why you want to avoid over sharpening your images. But I think gave us enough sharpness for the purposes of this. And so you can decide on how much or little you want, but generally speaking, probably don't want to go over 10 or 12 with the radius, and working somewhere around 150 or 200% in the amount of sharpening. So that looks good to me. I'll go ahead and click OK. Since this is a large image, it may take some time for these processes to finish. I'll use Command and minus to zoom out on my image. And I think that looks pretty good so far, considering where the images came from and the sort of gritty aesthetic we're looking for. Now what I want to do is make sure that my image is exactly 30 by 40 at 300 dpi, so that when I send it to print, it will print out at that exactly. So we're going to do that by cropping our image. So we'll click on the crop tool, and then what we're going to use is we're going to use the height times the width times height times resolution. This allows us to put a very specific width and height and resolution in there, and we know exactly what we're printing to, so this tool comes in handy. This selection on the crop tool comes in handy to do it. So we'll pick the width times height times resolution, and we will fill in the fields. We have 30 is our width, and then 40 is our height, 30 by 40 at 300 pixels per inch, or dots per inch if we're talking about printing. So this is what we want. We want our 30 by 40 at 300. Now this is when you could crop in some more on your image if you wanted to recompose, if you were interested in cropping out some of the light leaking that was happening in your image. Again, I think all of those things are kind of neat, and we're kind of embracing that aesthetic with our images, so I wouldn't crop too much of that out. I would try to leave in as much of that as you can, because again, I think that's very interesting. My computer is slowing down on me a little bit here, and just resetting my resolution to 300. And I think that crop is good for what I want. So I'll go ahead and hit the check up at the upper right hand corner, and we'll set the crop to my image. So that is it at 30 by 40 at 300 dpi. I can check my work by going again to image and image size. And I can see here that my image is indeed exactly 30 by 40 at 300, so is ready for print. Click OK. And now all I need to do now is save my image. So I'll go up here to File and Save As. We want to save as because we want to give it the correct naming convention so that when you hand it in to the lab to print and to the Google Classroom as your finished assignment, I know it's yours. So we want to make sure that the format is picked as JPEG. The file name, I want you to name your files as such. First initial, last name. So for me, that's M, Greco, first initial, last name, underscore, whatever you would like to name this. I'm going to name this concrete bench and back door. And then underscore 30x40, which is to indicate it's a 30 by 40. That is the print size that you want, that this image is prepped to be printed at 30 by 40 inches. So again, the naming convention for your files is first initial, last name, underscore the name of the file, and that doesn't matter to me what it is, just something that you can identify it by, underscore 30 by 40, which is the size of the print that we're making. And then I would save this. I'm going to save this in the folder that I have for this class, and I would recommend you do the same. Save it in a folder for this class called To Print or Final Prints. Go ahead and click Save. Your JPEG options, you want your cursor to be all the way up at large file, which is 12, a maximum quality. These are controlled by the slider. So as I slide it down, it changes all the way to the top, large file 12, maximum quality, and baseline standard format. These are choices for the JPEG compression. So baseline standard is good. Click OK. And I've saved my image, which again may take a moment because it's large file given its size and resolution. Once you have it saved, it's ready to hand in to both the Google Classroom and to hand in to me and to send to the lab to be printed.